Welcome into a very exciting episode of The Scene. I'm your host, Bubba Startz, and with me today is Steve Dramalski of the band Sundown 47. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Steve, I know your history is long and you've been on the road for, decades, but can we get a the short version of kind of your musical background, and then we'll pick it up with everything that you guys are doing now?
Sure. I started playing in bands in the mid 80s, and played in a band that had, some moderate success in late 80s and early 90s out of Milwaukee. Um, and that band kind of disintegrated mid 90s. And for all practical purposes, I kind of stepped out of making music and jumped into more backstage role, working as stage manager, production manager, whatnot. And I've been doing that since. And recently, well, over the course of the pandemic, I got the hankering to make some music again. And went in and recorded a record that took about a year to make, and kind of for my own purposes only. It was destined to become a file on my computer that I could listen to when I wanted to, and that was about it. But some people heard it and convinced me to get it out there, and so I did. And then Zach Bryan heard it and convinced me to take it a step further. And I put the band together in real, because it was originally recorded with studio musicians. And we came together, got a real band together, and have been out hitting the road now. So it's kind of fun. It's fun to be doing it again, for sure. I never expected it would be like this, though.
Well, and like you said, I mean, since the 90s, you've kind of been behind the scenes, and I'm sure it's very easy for a guy to just like accept that. You're like, I'm still doing music. It's not the worst day job, right? Like you're
Right.
still kind of getting to live the dream, right? But it's not the same. Like being out there isn't the same as getting to play your music for all those people. So I'm very happy for you, just as an artist myself, to that you get to get out and just play. And granted, you're getting to play on some pretty big stages that you probably weren't expecting either. Watching the videos from US Bank Stadium is just bonkers, but no doubt your connections, being in the music business, kind of accelerated a lot of those things. You weren't starting from square one. You were able to make a record, and then there was people out there that you could give it to that could accelerate that process more than a guy like me could. Is that fair to say?
I would say yes, and I think it really falls into being in the right place at the right time category, because none of this was intentional, like none of it. And it just kind of happened very organically. And if it's going to happen, let it happen. I just jumped in on it.
Well, that's great. It takes a lot of courage to do that. I think what we forget is it takes a lot of courage to write a song, to record it, and then to show that to someone else, to
Right, right.
anyone, takes a lot of courage. And I think that we forget that as people who do that for a living, or around people that do that for a living. It's a very vulnerable position. So, like I said, very proud of you just to get back in the studio to. Were the songs new songs that you were crafting, or was it kind of had this stuff, a catalog of 20 years of being on the road and writing? And what was the kind of process for the album?
Well, the whole thing kind of, I was literally sitting one night watching some YouTube videos and just kind of going through old, archival stuff, music stuff, and I came across a Neil Young video, "Don't Let It Bring You Down," that he did on a BBC show back in 1971. And I've worked for Neil Young for quite a while, and so I've seen him play many, many times. But this particular performance kind of really floored me, as it was just everything that the way that he sang the song, the way that he was playing. It was just him and an acoustic, and all of it was like quintessential rock and roll. It was just him solo, but it really moved me. and it made me gave me the urge to cover that song, which, came out of the blue. It's not something I had done in 30 years. So I was like, I called up a friend of mine who has a studio in Minneapolis and said, "Hey man, I want to do a version of this song, and can you help me put some musicians together?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, man, come on down." So we went over there, recorded that song. I had another couple songs in my pocket that I'd kind of written over the years and never done anything with, so I laid those down. And as we went, I pulled out a couple of songs from back in my old band days that were either not recorded or previously recorded, and I wasn't happy with them, and re-recorded them. And that's just kind of how it all came together. So it's a whole mishmash of brand new stuff, old stuff, and there's a couple covers on it too.
Awesome. So you're kind of able to go back and to cover the 30 years that you were kind of out of the performing and recording aspect and catch us all up.
Completely,
Yeah.
completely.
So now we can move forward, right? Obviously, I saw the US Bank. That must have been from last summer, I'm guessing,
Yep,
out on
yep,
tour.
yep.
And I mean, it's incredible. I'll be there in a few weeks. My wife and I are going to the Monday Night Football game. And to imagine being on a stage in front of that many people to me is still kind of I don't know if I can fathom it, right? Like I've played in front of a few thousand at local amphitheaters and things, but the just the sea of people and then the rising of the stands and
Yeah.
it's an incredible thing. I'm glad you guys got some great video to share. Because I think Steve, what's the coolest thing is that like you're one of us, right? Like when we see you up there, and granted, we just met 5 seconds ago, but you're friends with guys that I know up in the Minneapolis scene, Xander being one of them, who's going to be opening for you at your
Mhm.
guys' 7th Street entry show. It's um it's really cool for us to see guys that we have that one-to-one with out there, making it, right? Getting to play the
Right,
big shows, getting to go on tour with the big guys and to go do that thing. That's what kind of gives us the um it gives the visualization to us that hey, we can do that. Like if Steve's out there doing it, then why can't I?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
well, I think that that's in today's world, having played that role of being a musician out there, getting in the van and driving all over the country and playing and struggling and trying to make some dough at it so you can keep playing. And I've been there, I've done that, and it was a different day and a different time. And I think now literally there is opportunity out there, and I think it's obtainable. As I said before, man, none of this, I never, this was not my trajectory. Like this is not where I planned on being right now. I'm surprised I'm still here, to be honest. Like being able to do a gig, a dream gig like that was fantastic. But now having everybody in the band kind of locked in on it and going, "Hey man, let's keep this together and see where this goes." Um, Really is inspiring to me to keep it going. And then to have, guys like Zach or guys like Neil, kind of give me the push and say, keep doing it. That means a lot.
well, yeah, it carries weight, no doubt. And Zach's a great example of a guy that's one of us. I mean, 3 years ago, nobody knew
Right.
who the hell he was.
Right. Right.
Just this meteoric rise to the top and to get watch him and all these close friends. Love that he's a veteran. Just his whole story's beautiful, right? And that's what is the most exciting for me, getting to talk to you and experience a little bit of your story is like we're right there. You just got to stay on the grind. And I'm
Yep.
sure for you traveling around with all these bands and yeah, you're part of the crew, but you're not you're not in the band, right? You're not the
Right.
guys that are out there. Can you kind of talk about the difference between, you know, being out on the road as a part of the crew, but now being on the road, like you said, with your guys, your band that are all in it, and that the difference between the two, if there is a difference.
I think that there absolutely is, but I think the lifestyle or the day to day is more or less the same. I mean, when I was 22 making music, trying to be a touring musician, um, I've already achieved that lifestyle, right? Like I get on a bus every day, I drive to the gig, I do everything that the musicians do, with the exception of at some point, when I'm walking them to the stage, I stop at the bottom of the stairs and they go up, right? That, I mean, other than that, that's it. But I think as a musician yourself, you're out there putting your ideas forth into a front of an entire crowd. As a quote unquote roadie, I'm doing my job, and I have to do it to a certain standard, and those challenges are there, and I have the logistical challenges that I have to face on a day-to-day basis of keeping the tour going, making the shows happen, and making it right for the artists that I work for. But as a musician, you're out there putting yourself forward. You're out there, putting everything on the line, because it's all you, right? Like, and there's no filter. When you're up on stage, you're in front of an audience. The reaction is absolutely immediate. You get up there, they either like you or they don't. And then that energy that gets transferred between the audience and the band, that's what kind of perpetuates the whole show in and of itself, and gets you through that 2 or 3 hours. It takes a lot out of you. It takes a lot out of you. And then to have to uh, get up the next day and go and repeat the whole process all again, um, it's it's soul sucking. It really is, but at the same time, very gratifying, very satisfying.
Right. And I guess the part of the roadie is kind of you get all of that with very little room for self-expression, and then you're not getting the dopamine rush every single night walking on stage.
Right, right.
Is it, would you say it's easier coming from the artist side to wake up and to do their job because you're getting that, rather than the roadies who kind of just the drudge? You just got to keep going and trying to get to the end of a long tour.
Nah, man, I think each job or each element has its own challenges, and I mean, a lot of people say, man, I wish I could be a rock star and sleep in, and you know what? It hurts. You go out there and you perform for 3 hours. It's an athletic experience. A lot of people, I don't think, realize that.
Yep.
And I'm in my 50s now, so going out there and doing it, wow, coming off stage is like, woo,
I
it's a
need a
push,
chair and a beer.
right? But I think that have having that kind of a physical experience every day, or 3 or 4 times a week, and the mental experience of knowing that you have to go out there and you're putting everything forward, that is a lot. Whereas I think there's a lot of tension and stress on the other part of what I do, because a lot of people depend on me to make it right, right? So they're very different, very much the same at the same time, but I don't think one is easier than the other. Absolutely. In fact, I think you get to a certain level of being a musician where you have to carry the burden of a whole tour on you. You got all these roadies and all these vendors and all these fans, and then everybody's dependent upon you to show up that night and be 100% on game, 100% on point all the time. That's huge pressure.
Right. And I think you touch on something there that a lot of casual music fans would never even think of. That's not something that's equating in their head as they're buying the concert ticket and going to the show that night. None of us care as, ticket buyers where you were last night, what kind of shape you're in. We had Brooks and Dunn come through recently, and I think they were headed to Minneapolis next, but we saw him in Sioux Falls, and he's out there hitting the long notes and everything, and admitting, hey, I'm a little under the weather, but Minnesota can pay for that tomorrow, baby. I'm giving it to you tonight.
Right,
And just
right.
hearing that from him, where I've been there, right? Playing these 4-hour bar shows where, especially in my band, I'm the only singer. I'm grinding, man. I don't drink at my shows. I don't smoke cigarette. Like I'm doing so
Right.
much just to be physically prepared to do my job and to deliver on that. It is a lot of pressure. And it's nice to hear somebody who's done it with, the best of the best, that the job doesn't change.
Correct. You exactly.
So, Steve, we got a big one coming up. I know you're on the road now, but you're coming home to Minneapolis January 4th. You're at 7th Street entry. That's the First Avenue, the iconic First Avenue. Open it up is going to be my buddy Xander. What's the other band's name?
Melismatics.
I couldn't say it. I read it several times. I was like, I have no idea how I'm going to say this. So,
Right on.
phonetically nailed it. And you got a new single.
Yeah.
So, Something to a Stranger just came out. You want to talk about the song, and then we'll hammer on the show. And
Yeah, well, Something to a Stranger is one of the old songs that I actually wrote and performed with my old band Men Among Thieves years ago, and always been one of my favorites. I really struggled with the recorded version of it for many years. Like you put something into it, and I think that from a recording standpoint. Um, I had the opportunity this time around to really focus it because it was all mine. There was no dealing with other band members, it was my project and I got to really pour myself into it. And as I said earlier, I did it over the course of the year. So if I went in and recorded something and listened to it and didn't like it, I could always go back and redo it and change it and make it the way I wanted it. And I put so much work and effort. And back in the old days when we recorded it, was all on tape. So you went
yes,
in, you were paying studio time, you were paying the engineers, and you were buying tape at like even back in the 80s, it was $320 a roll of tape. And that only covered like maybe three songs. So if you think about it as you were recording, everything had to be spot on. And if it wasn't, there were a lot of times where you'd go, you know what, that's good enough. Let's move on from there. And then that kind of keeps poking at you for, years and years and years after. You're like, God, I hate that. I wish I could have changed it. I wish it was, we would have taken the time to make it different. But, this was my project. It was passion. And I was able to go through and really nail the songs down the way I wanted them to. And the song "Something to a Stranger," it came, I don't think it's about anything specific other than, things that we've all been through, how maybe your relationships or moments in time appear to be one thing, and then as you move through it, it turns into something else. So in a lot of ways, it's a mirror image of this whole record and recording deal and the way that I tackled the songs themselves, not just about the story itself. It's more representative of a bigger thing.
well, and do you feel like that's even more so now than when you wrote it 35 plus years ago?
Oh yeah, totally. Because when you're sitting there in the moment writing the song, that's where you're at, right? And then you come back and you address that song 30 years later, and that's 30 years of experience that you have, and how your perspective, that you're looking at the words, and you're seeing those words with a totally different perspective. It's like I've always thought about it as a songwriter. If I sit and write a song or pen a song with somebody and write these lyrics as whatever, whatever it is that is inspiring me to write those lyrics. Who cares? Because like if I throw it out there, you might have this entirely different perception of those words, and everybody kind of has their own perception. So like once it goes on a record, and once it goes hits the airwaves, and once somebody else's ear hears it, it's theirs to do whatever they want with.
Right.
It's not what I wrote the song about is totally irrelevant because it's going to change from person to person, right? And so like I always hate the question. So what's this song about? It's like who cares? Doesn't matter. It's totally irrelevant
It's
because
just
whatever.
completely subjective.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, what is it to you? And exactly like you said, fantastic. So so is this part of the album then, or is
Yeah.
this a new,
So
awesome?
so we have a whole record out, it's 12 songs. We put a single out last August right before we did the show with Zach. And that's doing, it's doing pretty good out there. I'm happy with it. And Something to a Stranger, as you said, just came out, and it's, people are listening to it, and the response has been really good on it. Got another single coming out in January, and the record comes out in February. And we've started adding shows. And as you said, the 7th Street Entry show, what a perfect place to kind of start. Like whereas US Bank Stadium was it was a dream. It was a thing. It was like it just happened. Nobody I couldn't have like planned that to save my life. It landed on my lap, and there we go. Let's do this. But now that we have a band, to be able to start at 7th Street of all venues, I mean, it's so iconic. It's up there with the CBGBs and the whiskeys and the greatest clubs in this country. And it's got so much history, and it's got history for me because I used to play there back in the day many years ago. And so it's cool. It's cool to be able to come back and start doing that thing.
To return the conquering hero now, and to lay it on
I,
down
I
with
don't know about that. I would say to return the guy who has to prove himself all over again. Hopefully some people show up and we play and it's great.
Well, we're gonna do everything we can to make sure the people show up for you. We'll be doing a feature. I've been digging into the catalog and checking out the videos and checking out your music. I'm a big fan. Definitely a throwback to, I would say, like post grunge rock, reminiscent Blues Traveler, Gin Blossoms, bands like that. It wasn't real heavy. It wasn't real angry. You could write love songs again. Uh, that's the kind of music that I grew up with. I was born in 86, so I was really coming of age, less of Pearl Jam 10 and more of those 94, 95, 96. And then the whole, music scene just got dumped on its head with boy bands and stuff in the late 90s. But it's nice to see the music that I like, good rock music, good songwriters, good rock songwriters making a comeback. And Steve, you're right there at the forefront, man. And we appreciate you so much for just being yourself. And I'm glad you came back to songwriting and performing yourself, because obviously that's where you belong. So
Thank you. Yeah, man, it's cool. And playing with the guys we're playing with, all of them, you know, um, like Jeff and Joe, I played with years ago, and to be able to kind of do this again with your brothers, that's good. That's really good.
and that's really the dream. It's not so much about the venues and everything. It's getting to do something really awesome with your brothers and to go experience that, and sisters as well. Plenty of ladies out there in the music business now. That's the dream. And that's kind of what I'm building with the Scene Project, Steve, is that, the middle of South Dakota is a tough place to put a band together.
Yeah, I
But
hear
I
you.
can connect with all of these beautiful people and these songwriters, and just all of these people that are out there expressing themselves every single day. And we get to be part of this much larger team. That's kind of why I built what I built here. And the same thing, this wasn't in the plan. I wasn't a podcaster 6 months ago, and now look at us
Right.
go. So hey, I'm proud of you, Steve. Thanks for being out there and doing the thing, and being a part of the scene.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate this, and the support is huge, and just you know, the fact that you dig the music means a lot. It really does. I love it.
Well, I really do dig the music. Not just saying it. It's like I said, a throwback to the music that I grew up with, and I think we're going to see a resurgence of that. I think with the way that country music came back in a big way over the last several years, those songwriters, that storytelling is coming back, and it's about to express itself in all genres. And I think you're
Yeah.
right there at the tip of the spear, man, and you're out there doing it in a big way. And yeah, I thank you because you're paving the way for a guy like me to come in with rock songs that are trying to tell a story. I needed someone to pave that way, somebody coming in with, I don't want to like street cred or whatever you want to say, the guys that you've worked with, the experiences that you've had in the music business, to put you in that position. We need that. You had to go through that whole life so that you can pave the way for a whole nother generation that's coming behind us, even that are going to do even more with it. So I appreciate you, Steve. It's a big thing that you've been doing, and I'm so happy that you get to express yourself, and to get this album out there has just got to be a joy.
Right on. Well, thank you. I think, we're coming to a new time where everyone's cut music up into all these little tiny genres. And now I think we're getting back to a time where you don't have to be a genre. You just have to make music. And it's all music, and who cares, whatever you want to call it that, country, alt country, outlaw, rock and roll, heavy metal. Who cares? It's just
Steve, I call my style modern gypsy rock.
right on.
Guys, I used to call it rockabilly reggae funk, but it was too much of a mouthful.
I'm with you all the way, man.
All right. So sundown47.com for more about you guys. We got the show January 4th at 7th Street Entry. That's with Xander, and you'll have to, the Melismatics?
No, Melismatics.
Melismatics. I'll get it. By the time I get up there, I'll be visiting Minneapolis real soon. You'll probably be on the road, so we won't get to connect then, but I'm sure we're going to run into each other soon, Steve. Thanks for being part of the scene. Appreciate you.
Take care.
Thanks for listening. Remember to follow the Scene Projects on all your social media channels and get even more content at thesceneprojects.com.
No other pour that love on me like water. Gotta know she'll pull the love that's made for two.